start with the intros again, yeah, okay. I am Hank Kalet. I am a reporter with NJ Spotlight and Cover Economic News. I've been a journalist for 24 years, primarily covering local communities in Mercer and Middlesex County. I now teach journalism at Rutgers, and I teach writing here at Middlesex.
My name is Joe Malinconico. I'm currently editor of Patterson Press. We're a news service that covers the city of Patterson. I've been a reporter for 25 years. You know, 6 or 7 of them, the old News Tribune covering Middlesex County government here. Before, and after that, 13 plus years with the Star Ledger covering county government and then state transportation system, and eventually the seaports of Port Newark and New Jersey, and this is a quote-unquote investigative reporting session. And I'll say what I said to the first guys. I never call myself an investigative reporter, because if you're a reporter, you're supposed to investigate. You know, if you're a reporter, you're supposed to ask questions and try to find that information. Otherwise, you're just a stenographer. You know.
So, okay, so I guess, how do we want to start this?
Well,
You
you know,
want to start with questions?
what's that?
Let's start with some questions this time.
Okay.
You guys have questions specifically, things that you want to address, and we'll try and kind of tailor this to your interests and your needs. So, yeah.
One question. We started a community newspaper in Jersey City from a community organization to report the news that you don't hear otherwise in the regular newspapers,
Right.
television, whatever. What I want to know is, where would I find the rules or the laws that we need to follow? That way we quote somebody, or we say, for example, BBC or NBC, how to...
Now, when you say quote somebody, you're talking about taking material from other media?
From other media. For example, Monsanto. We usually don't hear that within our borders, but in other countries, they are doing a lot of stuff regarding Monsanto. And if we say, okay, the media in Colombia, for example, what they're doing over there, you know, they're organizing against these GMOs.
Well, I mean, you know, plagiarism is bad. You know, we want to give credit, you know, and the worst thing we can do as journalists is purport to present information as ours that really was developed and reported by someone else, you know. So we attribute, and I try to attribute as fairly and accurate. So I mean, and depending on what you're saying, now we have some sites that don't create or don't generate their own content, you know, and all they do is attribute and take other content and become and there are others. But I guess the bottom line is, you know, the rules. There's so many different permutations. It'd be hard to get through them right now. But you know, always attribute. You know, don't. If somebody did an interview, if you're going to use a quotation that somebody else used, make sure you don't portray it as a quotation that you developed during one of your own interviews.
So-and-so told the Washington Post.
Yes.
This is okay. Or according to this Colombian news source. And if it's online, provide the link to the story.
Right.
But yeah, like Joe said, there's a lot of permutations. That's probably something we can talk about a little bit after. I think let's focus more on, I guess, the ferreting out of information. What kind of information you guys are looking for?
Right.
So
one of the things, you know, that the Citizens Campaign wanted us to talk about was Oprah. And I mean, and I don't know how many people, what you know or don't know about Oprah, you know, I mean, but when I say Oprah, do most of you know what I'm talking about? Most people do? You know? Okay, good. So that, what was it?
Would that be the open public records act?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
we don't have the
The open-
slideshow going.
Yeah. Well, okay.
We have been using it, but Heather was.
Not really, yeah.
Heather was doing it, so
Yeah,
I'll put up here.
okay.
I mean, the Open Public Records Act, you know, it's not a foolproof or fail, you know, but basically it's an enforcement mechanism so that when you ask a public official for information that's supposed to be public, you have a rule, a law, something to back you up that in theory, is supposed to force them to give it to you. They're supposed to, you know, and in truth, as I said earlier, so unfortunately, a lot of people now use Oprah as a speed bump to getting you information, because 25 years, well, no, you know, but years before that, if you said, hey, can I get the payroll? Can I find out how much, you just appointed a new business administrator, how much does she, this happened to me in Patterson a couple years ago. They appointed an interim business administrator at a school board meeting, and I said, how much are you paying him? And the response I got was Oprah. And I said, wait a minute, you know, I mean, and they said, oh no, you know, that's information we can only give you through Oprah. And that's a misperception that a lot of public officials have. Oprah is not a hoop that we have to jump through, and I mean, Oprah protects citizens and journalists. You know, reporters are not a special class, but you know, what that law is designed is to hold government accountable, you know. So, unfortunately, it's become somewhat of a speed bump, but in some instances. But what it does is that when you ask for something you're entitled to, you have a whole law. You have a law. You have a government records council to appeal to. You have case law and track record to get that information.
What am I not entitled to?
Well, a lot of things, and that's such a, it's kind of a broad question, but you know, okay, but let's use an example, and let's go right to the OEM, because that was a good,
Yes, that worked
yes. Okay, part of the theme here is Sandy, you know, the next, whatever they're calling it, what do you call it?
The next superstorm.
The next
Yes.
superstorm, yes, superstorm. Well, what kind of words we come up with, I don't know. So, you know, you're preparing for the next superstorm. Well, a good place to start is you all live in municipalities. You know, that's one. You know, I bet $1 million on that. You know, each municipality is supposed to have an OEM director. You know, Office of Emergency Management. So, one thing you're entitled to is to find out who that is, whether or not they're paid, if they are paid, what the salary is, and most wonderfully, you can then file an Open Public Records Act request for that person's resume. Okay? Now, the question came up. Now, you can ask for, and especially if they've just appointed a OEM manager, you can ask for the resumes of everyone who applied for that position. You can ask for that. I can ask for a lot of things, you know, and I'm not always going to get it. And really, let me get a name here, Monica, okay? So if everybody in this whole quadrant applied for that job, we had 8 applicants, and Monica got the job, I could ask for resumes of all applicants. And probably if I asked 50 different towns for that, probably 48 of them will only give me the resume of Monica, the applicant who got the job, and would not give me everyone else's resume. They wouldn't have to give me they don't have to give me every. So that's just one example of what I'm not entitled to. I am entitled to Monica's resume. And what good does that do me? I don't know.
Until you see it.
Exactly. You know, we ask questions to get information, and sometimes it's holy shit, look at this, and sometimes it's, oh, look at this, you know?
Sometimes they'll say working documents are off limits.
Mhm.
However, you ask for them, and you may ask for them multiple times, and you change the way you ask for them each time, because at some point, that material is not just a working document. When they're working on a budget, every iteration of the budget should be public. They're discussing the information in that working document publicly. So,
And let's talk about Monica's resume a little bit. So, what am I entitled to in her resume? Well, you know what, if Monica's like most of us, her resume has her phone number and her address. They have every right to black that out. You know, they have every right to black that out. They don't always do that though. You know, we cross our fingers and ask. You know, we ask for the resume. Sometimes, you know, you use Oprah to get information. Like there was an official in Patterson who I heard some things I wanted to investigate. I needed to find out her address. So I threw a Hail Mary pass and requested her resume. And I was lucky. The guy in the end zone caught it, and the resume came back with her address. I was able to use that address to get her driving record. But sometimes you don't always get that. You're not entitled to her address, not entitled to her phone number, you might get it. But you know what? I asked for another person in Patterson's resume, Public Board of Education, and they gave me a resume that had like you know, listed a couple jobs, and then I got a bunch of black. I got a bunch of black, you know, under work experience. I said, what the hell's this? You know? And they said, oh, her previous jobs had nothing to do with the job she has here. Bogus. You know, they're not allowed to redact previous work experience because the whole the things on the resume that they don't have to give you are address, phone number, and the personal section. If Monica's resume has a section, you know, personal stuff, they're allowed to redact that, you know. But previous employment they have to provide, you know. And then you say, well, what can you do about that? Well, you can file an appeal with the Government Records Council and wait 6 months. You can hire a lawyer and spend a lot of money, or you could say, so this resume, the last entry on this resume was from 2 years ago. So you're telling me that you're hiring an assistant business administrator who only has 2 years of work experience associated with the job, and after 20 years of work before that, no association? That's a pretty good story. Tell me more about what, you know, and sometimes by telling them what you're going to write, you can crowbar more information about them. But that just talking about the OEM, and that's, since we're talking about Sandy, one of the things they want, you know, give you some story ideas. You should all, if you want to, you're getting ready for the next storm, get your OEM manager's resume. And it might be that the OEM manager, everybody you know Golan Sipel is? You know, how many people know that name? How many people know who Jim McGreevy is? All right, Golan Sipel was the slippery banana that got you. And you know, Golan Sipel was Jim McGreevy's lover, who he had to make his August 2004 press conference about. And the deal with Golan Sipel and the whole thing there had nothing to do with, well, in our society, let's be real, it had everything to do with him being homosexual. But really, the real problem there, and the high ground problem there, was that he gave a job to his lover that his lover wasn't qualified for. You know, so you want to get your OEM. Not that your OEM coordinator is going to be the mayor's lover, but I mean the OEM coordinator may be the mayor's cousin. It may be, but maybe the mayor's cousin, or maybe the mayor's political contributor, or maybe a well-qualified person. You know, you find out who it is, and you go meet that person. You know, and that's a story everybody could do. It could be that the person only ran an ice cream shop, or it could be the person's an expert. Either way, you do the story. You know.
So the question is, who determines the qualifications? Because just at some point or another, nobody has qualifications.
Right.
Learn. I mean.
Well, our job is to basically say, this is what this person has done.
Right.
And then
to make a story out is really my point.
But that's it. This is what this person has done, and now we're going to do the other part of this, probably the most important part of this job. So we're going to go out, we're going to find people to talk to.
Yep.
This job is about talking to people, it's about interviewing, it's about asking questions. So the documents are in a lot of ways, a backup. They're important. But if you're not willing to go out and ask questions and talk to people who are close to this, then you're not going to get very far with it. Let the people you're talking to determine whether they should explain to you why these are good qualifications, or why they're not. And then your readers are going to look at this and say, the mayor just said that this guy who runs an ice cream shop is qualified. The readers are going to say, that doesn't make any sense to me. And then the readers will show up at town hall and they start yelling at the mayor, and you know, whatever happens. Okay, but it's the documents and it's the questions you ask, okay? Putting everything into context.
Hi, earlier you talked about using Oprah, so is there a form, or
Yes.
do you go to, oh, there's a form?
Every government entity is responsible to provide an Oprah form, you know, and the good ones make it available online. And they're supposed to make it, you know,
So where
make it
is
available.
online? Is it like a town? Like
You go to town's webpage, if you find, you know, for instance, in state government, if you go to state government, Oprah.com, there's a form you can fill out that allows you to file an Oprah for every agency in state government, and some of them then have breakdowns. So if you go to the Attorney General's office, there'll be a breakdown as to whether or not you want to file your Oprah with one division or another, you know. Yeah, there's a form. I don't like using the form because sometimes, I mean, I'm not really, Charlie could tell you this, I'm a Luddite, you know, and so some of these forms, you know, so you can, I tend to Oprah via email, and I, you know, I call up the clerk and say, who do I send an email to for an Oprah request, you know, and 9 times out of 10, they'll give you that, you know, and the key words is, when you're filing an Oprah request, you wanna say, under the Open Public Records Act, I am requesting. So right away, you're setting a legal basis so that if they tell you to hit the road, you can tell them, hey, wait a minute, I'm just not some schmuck asking for information. I'm a resident of the state of New Jersey. I'm entitled to this information under this law. You know, you have a sound basis. And then, you know, some people are real, the forms always ask if you're a felon, you know? And part of that is because they want to make sure somebody's doesn't, you know, and so some people actually say if they're emailing, I'm not a felon, you know, and the forms, you know, where that could, no, I don't want to say that. They also have a section for how much you're willing to spend, you know, because.
You're gonna pay for it?
Well, if I want 500 pages of the, you know, there's copying costs and sometimes there's staff costs, you know. And so what I say, so you give them a ceiling, and if what they're gonna do exceeds your ceiling, they contact you and say, hey, you said you're only willing to spend $5, this is gonna cost $45, you still want the record. Now, we didn't say this in the first thing, but you know what, if, you know, Patterson Press, we have, you know, I operate under really no budget for Oprahs, or very limited. I've probably put in $35 worth of, because one thing is, if they ask you if you're entitled, if you don't want to get copies of the document, you can say, hey, I just want to come in and look at it. It's a public, all these things are available for public review, and if you say, I want to come in and look at it, they have to allow you to come into their office and look over the document for free. You know, and
Actually,
then, yeah.
I want to point out, one thing you should do though, before you kind of enter this process, is review your town's website. Some towns are really amazing at providing information. Do a full review, see what the town offers first. What you're looking for may actually be there, and that'll allow you to not have to deal with the process.
Right, very good point.
But there is a good chance though that, especially the things that you might really want, you know, overtime costs, which we'll talk about, or resumes, or those kinds of things, those you'll probably have to Oprah. But the good town websites will have a lot of this information available right up front. You may have to dig, but.
Just real quick, and I forgot to say, key about Oprah too, is it entitles you to documents. It doesn't entitle you to information. So the way you craft your Oprah request is really important. Because if you just say, I want to know how the city's spending its money at the League of Municipalities convention this week, they can come back and say, you know, we have no, that's not an Oprahable question. You know, what you need to do is you have to put the file. I want to see all expense reports filed by public officials attending the League of Municipalities convention. I want to see expense reports. I want to see invoices. I want to see receipts. I want to see authorizing resolutions. You can if you keep naming different types of documents, and that's how you find out, you know, that the mayor had the $420 suite, whereas the councilman only had the $100 suite. You know, and whether and how much, and the mayor, you know, dined at a restaurant with 4 people for $333, and the DPW director went to McDonald's. You know, because you get all those receipts. So
And then you ask, then you go to the mayor and say, so who are those 4 people you talked to? Who were you dining with on such an expensive meal? Put the mayor on, and you tell the mayor that you're going to write a story saying that you did this during the convention. You can make it easy, and tell us, or let the public wonder.
Charlie and this gentleman here.
Sure. So what can you do if the documents don't exist? So regarding like emergency management, we have an emergency management council in Brunswick that does not take minutes at their meetings. They weren't really clear on who's actually on the council. They can only tell me like that they met during Hurricane Sandy, and the rest is.
Only in New Brunswick, right?
Yeah, right. So what can you do when you're in a situation like that, the documents just don't exist?
Well, you know, the documents don't exist. You know, there's a lot of different ways you could approach that. You know, first off, depending on what you're asking for, if those documents don't exist, that becomes the story. You know, and I think you ended up writing that. You know, I mean, and it might not be a scandalous story, but you know, the city's emergency management, you know, they don't have any reports. You know, or they don't take minutes. You know, that's not the sexiest story. It's not, but you know, it's part of a little nut a little step in the whole public accountability process, you know? I mean, I just got, there's an Oprah in the city of Patterson, someone's asking for receipts from payments to vendors. And the initial response to the Oprah request was that this document doesn't exist. And I said, gee whiz, Mr. Chairman, so you're telling me that there were payments made to vendors and you don't have receipts for that? Can you tell me more about that? Because I'm gonna write a story about the fact that you don't have receipts from these vendors. And actually, when I posed the question that way to the chairman, based on his response to an Oprah request, his response was, oh, the response to the Oprah request was a misunderstanding. We do have receipts. Come on into the office at 10 o'clock on Monday, and I'll show them to you. You know, and that's what I'm going to do on Monday morning. I'm going to the MUA in Patterson to look at the receipts. You know, so one thing, you write the story. You know, or you know, and check the laws. I mean, you know, certain things they're obliged to have. You know, and so it becomes a stronger story. You know, certain stuff could be just whiny kind of, oh, they don't have the reports. No, but if you're saying that state, the city doesn't have state required emergency management plan on file, then that becomes a stronger story. You know, state required, state mandated. You know, you can throw that in the, that they're not holding up to that, then you got them a little bit stronger. Okay.
If your Oprah request requires staff time to compile the records, can they charge you for that?
Yes. Yeah, they can, and they have to tell you in advance what they're gonna charge, and you have to agree to it. And if what they're gonna charge you is unreasonable, if they wanna charge you $45,000 for a clerk's 3 days worth of work, then you can go to an entity known as the Government Records Council and appeal that. The copy fees are stipulated and really specifically spelled out, but the Government Records Council is and look, the Citizens Campaign loves the Government Records Council probably a lot more than I do, or maybe Heather, I should say, does, because it's a government entity. It means it's bureaucratic and slow, But, and so what I wanted to get today, I might not be able to get until June now, because I have to but yeah, they can charge you for staff time, and if you believe what they're charging is unreasonable, you could appeal that.
And an Oprah request that I have already received the documents, could I distribute those to other people who are interested?
Public documents.
Yeah, yeah. I tell people, anything you're giving to me, you're giving to all my readers, I mean, all I am is a conduit, and so, yeah. You give me it's a good reporting tool sometimes. You get a document, and then you use it to get reaction and comments from people, Yeah, and you can put it online, it's a public document.
Yeah, that's the thing. Remember, the word here that's key is public. We don't have rights to anything that you don't have rights to. We just have potentially better access, and we're paid to go out and do this, where you guys have other jobs. So you're doing it in your spare time, we're getting paid to do it. That's really, and we have additional training, obviously. But these are public documents, so if you can do what you need to do with them.
So you talked about, that's a good question. It's the whole, what do they have to give me, what don't they have to give me, And we can segue that to budgets,
Oh, yeah.
Because part of this is about Sandy, right, and the next superstorm. And so like, what can you do with a budget in order to cover the next superstorm? Has anybody ever, how many people have looked at their municipal budgets? Just curious, and what have you looked at, really? Because there's budgets and there's budgets. And here's what the public information officer for the Patterson Board of Education once said to me is, well, I gave you what we advertised in the paper. That's what's legal. I gave you what's legally required in that public advertisement in the paper. What more do you want?
And the advertisement, of course, only basically says this is how much money we have coming in. This is what we're spending. It doesn't. The advertisement no longer requires them to provide much of any information at all. It used to be much more in-depth. So now, you get something like that and you don't really have anything at all.
But just because she gave me what was required in the paper, we're talking apples and oranges, okay? What's required in the paper for legal publication of paper is not, is a whole different set of you know, it's a whole different bunch of information than what they're required to give any member of the public under OPRA. You know, so let's go to OEM and talk about Superstorm. I mean, you might see in the advertised public budget a line item that says OEM expenditures $670,000, revenue $670,000. You know, doesn't tell you much, and that might be all you see in the budget. But then what they have are budget booklets and backup documentation that tells you more. That itemizes, okay, and that $760,000, $550,000 is for salaries and wages, and $200,000 is for other expenses. And then there should be another page that tells you what those other expenses are. You know, so you know, is at that 200, and so one thing you do, you just look at that year's other expense item. You know, are they spending $250,000 on scuba equipment? You know, are they buying a new boat? Are they doing this? You know, are they spending $60,000 for training at the police academy in Seagirt? Now,
That actually dovetails, because if they're buying a new boat, it may not even show up in that section. You may have to look at a capital budget because it's a long-term purchase. So you have to be conscious when you're looking at budgets that there are multiple places to go. You're not just looking at the OEM section. You're looking at the police department, the fire department, the first aid department, the capital budget. And again, you're asking questions. Keep coming back to that. But also, you know, the salary line, this is $500,000 for salary. There should be a page attached to say, these are the people who are being paid out of this budget and how much. And how much of that is Joe's favorite word, overtime.
and that salary budget won't necessarily list the people by name. It doesn't have to, it won't. It'll list the people by position in the budget. It'll say, you know, an OEM director being paid $40,000 or $90,000, you know, assistant director, you know, so and it should list how much in salaries. It might say emergency technicians, $140,000. And one year's budget gives you an opportunity for certain stories. Because if you see they're buying scuba equipment, that's a story worth doing. And I'm not saying every story we do isn't a scandal. I mean, investigative reporting doesn't necessarily mean we need to expose the oh my God, they're stealing money. You know, sometimes investigative reporting is just a step towards informing the public about the basic operations of the government that they pay taxes to. So
Scuba equipment might be good in New Brunswick because of the Raritan River, but it may not be as appropriate in a town without a body of water, obviously. So
Right.
you also have to know the community that you're dealing with.
yeah, if you're covering with touching or buying scuba equipment, something's up. You know, and we laugh, and that's like a 1 in 500 shot. But, you know, I mean, sometimes this, you know, this is New Jersey, you know, and you never know what you're gonna find, you know? You know, that 1 year's worth of, the OEM for 1 year will give you a certain level of information. But, you know, budgets are wonderful things because, you know, if you look at, you need to look at budgets, not just in 1 year, take the blinders off and look at last, you know, so the rule of 3 is always good. You know, get the budget for 3 years, and this is operable information. Okay, we're getting back to the first thing we talked about. So you can go in and say, you know, under the Open Public Records Act, I would like the line item budgets for the Office of Emergency Management for the fiscal years 2011, 2012, and 2013. You know, and so then you can see that the OEM director. 2 years ago, the salary for the OEM director was listed at $40,000, and suddenly it's $80,000. You know, why? I don't know. Maybe Sandy hit, and maybe the town said, "Oh my God, we weren't ready for it. We've gone from a part-time to a full-time OEM director." And you know what? That's not a scandal, but you know what? The taxpayers ought to know. On multiple levels, that no longer does Mayberry have a part-time OEM director, we now have a full-time one, you know, whose resume we could write about too.
And also look at the revenue side.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that towns will do, if they have multiple places that they get money, they will hide And literally, they will hide expenses. They will attach it to revenue that comes in. A number of years ago, when I was covering South Brunswick, they have a separate budget for water and sewer. Well, they were, a part of the administrator's salary was assigned to water and sewer. So $60,000 was coming out of the regular budget, $30,000 was coming out of the water sewer budget, but it didn't, you had to look at both to see that. It was more, the bigger questions came when the police chief was having 20% of his salary assigned to water and sewer. So water and sewer customers were subsidizing the larger budget, okay? It's a pretty big story when you think about it. Taxpayers should be paying for police department. That's at least what the community wanted to see happen. They were able to hide increases in salaries and that kind of thing. So look at both sides of the budget.
So then leading off of that question, what happens if you are a citizen activist and you request this information but you don't necessarily know what to look for? Who do community activists partner with or go to try and decipher some of this information? Do you work in partnership with community journalists to request the information that maybe you can't get your hands on for some reason, or how to go about it?
And it's funny, the real, that slide happens to be up on, we talk to people, and we try to figure out, like, and I'm not sure exactly, but if I get there have been times I've gotten documents, budgets, reports, and I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I'm just a schmuck reporter trying to put one and one together. And so I've gone to people. You develop sources over time. And you develop expert sources. You get people, you develop relationships with people you trust, and you say, okay. So there have been times when you take that report, that document, and go to one of your sources and say, hey, you mind reading this over? What do you think of this? You might take 10 minutes reading this over with me and telling me what I should be looking at. And they'll see something I won't know.
Well, I think specifically the question I'm trying to get to is, for the people who are not working,
Yes.
who are not getting paid to do this, do we come to you? Do we go to other people? Like, what are the partnerships that you try to develop with?
I have always made it a point to get to know every single gadfly activist in the towns that I cover. Not because I'm looking to take their side, but they bring information. If they know that I'm interested, they will bring information to me. Then I will do what I'm supposed to do with it. So if you have information like that, yeah, you can reach out to the reporters in your community. That's one thing that you can do. But if there are other activists and other gadflies in the community, you can create networks and that kind of thing. But that part's kind of outside of, I think, what we're here for.
And beyond that, actually, the Citizens Campaign, one of the sponsors, you can contact Heather Taylor at the Citizens Campaign, and she can. What's that newfangled word? Network. She can connect you to somebody who could well, she might have the information. Part of this is just asking for help. I don't know this, how this works. And Heather will point you to the right direction. Rutgers, universities in the state have experts on certain things, and look, the professor of such and such at Rutgers is a lot more accessible if you're a reporter from the Star Ledger than if you're Joe Schmo covering, South River, for your own little blog, But, you try different things,
And we have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Any other questions, or should we just?
You want to do interviewing tips?
Or
did you already kind of?
Okay, interviewing tips. Sometimes, we told you last week, you want to develop relationships. You want people to trust you. And you know what, you want to be trustworthy because what you do if you're doing this, you want to be able to sleep at night. But so you try to be honest in the interviews. You develop relationships because. And that OEM manager who might really be qualified, do a story about don't do the story about the dirt. Your readers, we have a responsibility to present a full and accurate picture of what we're covering. And so, so if Monica is a well-qualified OEM director and she just got appointed, then we do a little profile of Monica. you know, and we ask her about, you know, how long she's been doing this and things. But why is that important? Because now, Monica and I know each other now. She's the OEM director, I'm the reporter, you know? And so, 3 months from now, after I've done the profile on the new OEM director, when the flooding ravages my town, and I pick up the phone and say, hey Monica, it's Joe Malinconico from Patterson Press, how you doing? She doesn't say, who? She says, oh, hey, how you doing? And we now have a relationship, you know? And that's so much of this.
And she's also not saying, oh, it's that guy who's only written bad stuff about me. Right. If you've written the bad and the good, if you've written the good stories, if you've done the
Yes.
profile on the new superintendent, and then you've gone on and to do some other thing that he's done really positively, when something bad happens in the school district, when there's, you know, when there's a teacher sex scandal or something, you can pick up the phone, you can call the superintendent, and the superintendent knows you're playing fair. The superintendent knows, because you've warned him, you said, look, bad stuff happens, you know, I'm gonna call you, but, you know, I'm gonna be there for the good stuff. He's much more likely to talk to you. He's much more likely to give you access than if you just kind of show up out of the blue, out of nowhere. So, relationships. You should, everybody, even citizen journalists, you need to know your municipal clerks. I don't think we said this before. You need to be on a first name basis with your municipal clerk. You need to not only show up and yell at the mayor at the council meetings, but you need to find other ways to interact with the mayor as well, so that when you do show up, the mayor knows you, and the mayor's not like, oh, it's this guy again, right? Okay? They need to be able to see you as a kind of a full person, not just the person who's on the other side of an issue from them. Like I said, you know, as a reporter, I've always reached out to the Gadflies in the community. I want to know the people in the neighborhoods. I want to know, you know, who the activists are on a particular issue, because that gives me another perspective. Okay?
And you know, and along those lines, since you know, what we mentioned interviewing techniques, I think it's also important, like how we ask our questions. We didn't talk about this in the last one. How we ask questions and how we approach people. You know, because you know, really, yes, I want to be as fair as possible. You know, and if I interview people with pejorative questions, if I have a preordained vision of the story, I'm doing myself and my readers a disservice. And if I start tipping my hand, and worse than that, if I start asking questions like, so, you know, can you tell me how the mayor stole the money? You know, I'm already sending the wrong message. You know, if the mayor stole the money, do I want to find out? Damn straight I do. That's the whole reason why I exist. You know, that's the First Amendment. That's what we do. But if I'm coming off it with that mentality, I'm sending it. You know, so can you tell me how the mayor spends the money? You know, I have to be very conscious of what questions I'm asking. You know, and you know what, I have to be conscious of what information I'm passing along. I mean, you know, Tuesday I was supposed to do a feature about a concert group in Patterson, kids playing the violin in Patterson, which isn't really a popular thing in Patterson if you're a kid. You know, it's not, you know, and suddenly I got a call about something involving I got a call that the mayor was going to court in the next town over to fight a parking ticket. You know, mayor fights City Hall. You know, the mayor got a parking ticket in his own town, but he got switched to the next town because. So I had to call the person up who had, you know, he said, oh, I said, there's a breaking story I got to go cover. You know, we have to reschedule this. And the person I was rescheduling with was another public official. But I didn't know, I didn't have confirmation yet that the mayor was really fighting a parking ticket. So I can't say, hey, Manny, I'm not going to show up today because I hear the mayor's fighting a parking ticket. Because people view me as a source of information. And if I start talking about the rumors I hear, or the innuendo I hear, then I'm giving credibility to stuff that I don't know to be true. You know, and so I'm always very clear about how I ask questions and what information I share with people. You know, you taint the information process by asking questions in a pejorative way. You know.
And there's an order really as well to the questions that you're asking and the sources that you're involving in the story. So if you know, go back to the mayor, how is the mayor spending the money or stealing the money? You're obviously not starting. The first person you're calling is not the mayor. That's the last person you're going to. You want to be able to set this up. You're going to go talk to the sources who might have information about this. And you're going to hold off on going to the people who might talk to the mayor until the very end. So that when you go to the mayor, you have all of the information you need and you can ask the mayor some very straightforward questions. And you may be best doing that in person, because the mayor can't hang up on you in person. Okay. Now, that's not to say that you will always be able to do that, but you have to factor those kinds of questions. You know, if I call so-and-so up and I want to ask this question, and this person can hang up on me, is that the best way to do it, or should I go up and show up in their office or make an appointment, or, okay, so you have to think about all of these things. What's the order of the questions, what's the order of the sources that we need to reach out to here?
5 minutes.
I was gonna ask that question because I'm doing a story, there's a councilman was during election, was basically accused of electioneering. So, I did have him last, but then, you know, there were people, witnesses. Should you start with like the county and say, what's the law? Like, find out exactly what the law is, go to the clerk, and then the poll workers.
Without specifically saying that this particular councilman is who
Right.
you're looking at.
No, like, what is the law on electioneering?
Because you may find out from that what he's being accused of is perfectly legal,
Correct.
and then either you drop the story or you can
Should you start with
dispel
like
the rumor.
empirical data first, like?
Yeah.
Fine, because then you'd be wasting your time
Yeah.
talking to all these people, and you go to the law, and it's like, oh wait, it was actually illegal.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay.
This way you have a base on which to work.
All right.
So, you
Know the rules, know the rules.
always know the rules, yeah. Somebody in the back had their hand up. Do you ever?
I was clean glass.
Okay.
Just, you know the rules, check, recheck, and then verify. Before you go out with something, like just this past week, we all know what happened in the Garden State Plaza. They've had 3, 4, 5 fire alarms in between that. Now, the other day, they had a fire alarm there, and all of a sudden, Channel 7 jumped on it for some reason. Put out a breaking news alert, and the whole 9 yards, showed up with the helicopter, and it was absolutely nothing to scare the hell out of a lot of people. Like you're saying, it is, to that gentleman's question, before you jump on something, make sure you know what you're after, and it is exactly what it's supposed to be.
Now, we're in a very different news environment than we used to be with Twitter, so, and with social media. So you're always balancing the need to get the information out quickly you always want to be correct, but you're also balancing this. You know you may not be the only news source out there, so in a situation like that, you need to do a little bit of work, but you're also looking to get this information out as quickly as possible. So it's kind of, that's a tough one. And I think, we all saw what happened with the Boston bombing, and the way information was kind of dumped on the public that wasn't true. So we're always striving to avoid having that happen to us. But we're also, we want to be first with the information. We want to make sure that the public has the information as quickly as possible, especially if there's safety involved. So it's, I don't know that I would criticize ABC, but I'm not sure that I wouldn't either. I didn't see too much about that, so I don't.
There was another news source that they got it from.
That's when, then.
So, following up on that, in this kind of new media context, stepping up above some of the examples we've talked about, which has been very helpful, what would be, both of you, your top 3 do's and don'ts in terms of the current context and investigative journalism?
I mean,
I don't think that that's changed much necessarily.
It's do's and don'ts. I think the fundamental rules apply. A fact is just a fact. Be as accurate as you can, be as fair as you can, and because so much. The worst thing about, the dangerous thing about the blogosphere is the blurring of the lines, the people who have it. So if we stick to the facts and double and triple and be as fair as, be fair, stick to the facts.
Do the legwork.
Do the legwork, are the main do's, and then.
You said be fair.
Yeah.
Be be accountable to your readers.
Yeah. And to your
Huge,
credit.
it's a huge thing, which is, I don't know that the news media does that as often as it should be, own up to your mistakes. Be accountable, be transparent as we can be. We're asking the government to be transparent. We need to be transparent about our motivation, about where we get information short of, letting people know about, certain sources. We basically have to hold ourselves to the same level that we're expecting, that we're holding public officials to.
How much crowdsourcing, and how has that changed what you do?
About what?
Crowdsourcing, that comes in handy with like a storm like Sandy, or with the year before which was the year before? Irene. I think it comes in handy that way. But some things do lend themselves to crowdsourcing. If a beloved person in the community died and you're doing a kind of a feature obit, you could probably crowdsource, finding local people like off Twitter or off Facebook or something like that. But in terms of the investigative stuff, I'm not sure that you want to crowdsource, because that puts the information out there before it's verified.
Oh,
We have business
Okay,
cards,
so-
we have business cards out there if you want any other questions.
I'm sorry, we're out of time.